So there's a feeling when you walk into a room and you immediately forget why you're there, or when you see a shadow move in the corner of your eye, but when you turn around, there's nothing, just empty space. Maybe there's a place that you once walked into that a lot of people usually are there, but there's no one there. So liminal. It's a bit unsettling, but there's something wrong and you can't really quite name it. So that's the feeling this game, Subliminal, is built entirely around. It's a psychological horror game, just dropped on March 31st, 2026, and it's kind of been living in my head for a while, right? Since it's released and I've been playing through it. It's not just another Backrooms clone, right? Where you wander down, yellow hallways for hours. It's a bit messier. It's a bit more personal, and I think in some ways it's a lot more ambitious. So I'm just gonna break it all down. What works, what's a little bit frustrating, and if you should spend your money on it, really. Just a video, right? No fillers, just my take. So Subliminal comes from Accidental Studios. It's a relatively new team, and it's published by Gone Shooting and Infinity Fun, right? The premise is genuinely interesting. You're trapped inside your own subconscious, so to escape, you have to navigate through fragments of your own memories. But something's gone super wrong. The happy places that you once knew, they've rotted away. The familiar is a bit hostile. The game's tagline is, light shapes the world around you. There's bending shadows, opening doors. The world is kind of yours to discover, but it's a bit linear. So it's not just flavor text. The entire game runs on Unreal Engine 5 with lumen lighting and nanite geometry. You can kind of see it pretty well, the visuals of this, what I'm talking about. It's not just pretty. The lighting is the main mechanic. You can physically grab light sources, you can grab them around, move them, bend shadows to your will, change the lighting of a room, and the entire space around you physically changes. It's a fantastic hook. So one of those ideas that sounds simple on paper but creates endless possibilities, and the game really does know it. So the puzzles here, they revolve entirely around this interaction of light and perspective. On the Steam page is a line that sums it up perfectly. You're not given answers in Subliminal, you're given choices. In practice, the game hands you a toolbox and then just throws you into the deep end, right? Just there's no hand holding, there's no pinpoints or objective markers. It's just you, a room, a light source, and a door that shouldn't really be there, but it is. You spend a solid 10 minutes in one room earlier, just kind of moving back and forth between doors, because if they open, you have to close it, and if the lights turn off, you have to turn them back on. You're watching shadows stretch and twist. If you leave the lights off for too long, there's a weird liquid that comes from the ceiling. That kind of terrified the hell out of me. When it clicks, it feels like a genuine breakthrough. And there's a narration. There's a narrator in your head who kind of guides you through it. So it is linear in that sense. So it almost sometimes feels like maybe you've outsmarted the game, but when you're stuck, it feels like the game is kind of gaslighting you. That's the point. I think the environment itself is the antagonist. The longer you take to solve a puzzle, the more oppressive the space becomes. That water park that you kind of remember from childhood, this is the next section of the game. So maybe I'm gonna say level 2. It starts to look a little less happy. Less like a happy memory, and more like an abandoned prison. You have to go through one slide, you go down, and then it took me a good 20 minutes trying to find how to get to the next 2 slides, because there was barriers that popped up, and then I realized I just had to use the water gun to wipe up this dirt on the floor. This is the thing with the clues. I'm gonna get into that a little bit later, but when the puzzles work, they're great. They scratch the I'm smart itch, right? But when they don't, it's not a difficulty spike, it's just poor signaling. There's a review I read from user, sums it up. He's the puzzles, he says that the puzzles are pretty challenging with the difficulty gradually ramping up. The mechanics are fun, and when they start to get combined, it's good. And I agree, when everything clicks, it's satisfying. The problem is that the ramp up isn't always smooth. Sometimes you're climbing, sometimes you're just falling. So it's a mixed bag. The good puzzles make you feel smart. The bad ones they just draw on for so long, but they make you want to quit and watch someone else play it on YouTube. Here's the thing, on Steam reviews, at the moment, it's a little bit mixed. There's a lot of good positives, and there's a lot of negatives. Not to mention, when I tried the game for the first time, it kept crashing. It literally just didn't want to open until when I searched it up and found an obscure forum, and I realized I just had to disable the Intel AI boost. It's so random, I don't get why. And then since then, the game started to launch, right? So let's get to the part where the shadows, the dread, and that something isn't right feeling. You aren't alone in your own subconscious. The game introduces entities. The shadows don't actually make sense, right? They kind of lurk in the corners of your vision. They have a brutal mechanic, so the longer you hesitate or fumble of a puzzle, the more real they become. So if there's a section where you're trying to light up a light puzzle, it took too long to try and figure that out, suddenly the lights like flickered, you could feel something breathing down your neck. These are terrifying in a way that cheap jump scares never are. There's a build-up and a tension to it. It's not loud noise and the monster screaming in your face. It's dread, right? It's just a slow realization that you're being watched, and you've been watched for a while. That said, not everyone agrees on the enemy design. A review I saw from a user pointed out that the monster is a bit gimmicky. Turn in the very wrong mascot horror direction. You could kind of see it, right? The shadow AI isn't revolutionary. It's just a basic line of sight stuff. It won't scare anyone who's like played Amnesia or Outlast, but the atmosphere carries it. Even when I'm not being actively chased, I'm on edge. My shoulders are a bit tense, right? I'm listening to every creak and footstep that counts for something. I'm playing with headphones, so the game also uses sound design brilliantly. I play with headphones, as I just mentioned, and if you're not playing with headphones, you're probably missing half the experience. Footsteps that might be yours but might not be, there's a silence that stays for too long, and then there's a random clanking of a noise. That is tension. That is scary. I'm going to jump into what the community is saying in general. If you take a pulse check on what other players are saying, because I don't want to just give you my isolated opinion on everything. I think the community sentiment is a little bit complicated here. Just as I'm iterating the whole mixed reviews bag. First, the good. The game had over 500,000 wishlists on Steam before launch. I had it wishlisted. I was waiting for it for a long time. I saw when, I think was it Dashi Games or Queso, when they played the demo, it looked so cool. It looked so good. That's huge for an indie horror title. People were pretty hungry for this, and a lot of people are happy. These are reviews praising the visuals, the atmosphere, the unique puzzle mechanics, the figuring it out, the good take on liminal space, which also has a pretty good growing community. But there's also a very vocal contingency behind it that's frustrated. One user wrote a review that I think captured the split perfectly, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially, yes, the puzzles are annoying, the enemies are boring, the levels are repetitive, and the story is non-existent. But also, none of the people waiting years for this game ever wanted any of those things to be in the game. So, another one is that it's a fascinating take, right? Because it suggests that maybe the audience for this game, the people who've been following it since early development, maybe they wanted something specific. They wanted the liminal spaces. They wanted the vibes. They didn't necessarily want a tightly designed puzzle game. They wanted a vibe machine, right? Another user kind of described the game as having a rotted feeling that something is not quite right. Now, honestly, I think that's maybe the best description I've heard. The game isn't trying to be fun in a traditional sense. It's making you uncomfortable. It's a bit like the other Backrooms game, right? It's going to have a horror element to it. Liminal space in itself has an eerie feeling that it's supposed to give you. But for the general audience, maybe the frustration is understandable. If you're looking for a Portal level puzzle design, you're going to be disappointed. If you're looking for a Silent Hill level storytelling, you also might be disappointed too. Subliminal offers a bit more of a specific, atmospheric, slightly janky experience. You have to meet it on its own terms. So here's the thing about the visuals too. One last thing about the visuals. The levels, they are not just randomly generated liminal spaces. They are handcrafted memories. You explore basements, water parks, play places, motel lobbies. They're all rendered in meticulous detail. Nothing is quite right though. So slides, they lead to places they shouldn't. TV screens transport you between memories. And doors, they loop you back to the same room you started from. So that's the genius of the art direction itself. It's not just about high resolution textures or realistic lighting. It's about capturing that specific wrongness, that feeling of being in a place that looks familiar, doesn't behave the way it should. So the optimization is pretty solid. I've seen reports that even on our RTX 2060, you can run the game at 1080p with stable frame rates. I had to do some tinkering with the graphics itself. If you're worried about your PC melting, you're probably fine. So the final verdict on this is that after several hours of Subliminal, I think the atmosphere is like top tier. The liminal spaces, they feel real, lived in, and deeply unsettling. The sound design is excellent. When the game works, it shows some of the most immersive psychological horror I've played in years.
What's next?
Visually, it's a showcase for what Unreal Engine 5 can do. So the bad behind it is the puzzles are a little bit inconsistent. Some are clever, some are just annoying, and the enemy AI is basic. It won't scare anyone who's played the genre as like heavy hitters, and the story is like, it's a bit minimal. So if you're here for a narrative,
that it's unable to even decide
disappointed.
which foot to move next.
The game is probably for people that
Until,
want
of course,
the
it
type
eventually
polished
realizes
puzzle
that
designs
there was
like
nothing
Portal
worth
or
worrying
Witness.
about
You'll be
to
frustrated
begin
if
with.
you want a deep character-driven story like Silent Hill or I don't know, Resident Evil. You'll be frustrated. But if you want a slow burn, atmospheric horror experience, a game that messes with your perception, makes you question what's real and just wants to make your skin crawl, then Subliminal delivers. It's not a masterpiece, but it's memorable. If you've played Subliminal, let me know in the comments. Like, did the puzzle work for you? Did that drive you crazy? Which ending did you get? I want to just hear your take. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.